morning is Frank Foerster, who did his work that he's presenting here at the University of Hertfordshire, but is now at which university?
Queen Mary.
At Queen Mary University, London. And he's speaking to us about language grounding in linguistically unconstrained human-robot interaction.
So thanks for inviting me. So what you see here is I'm currently working at Queen Mary, but all of what you see was done at University of Hertfordshire and mostly within the iTalk project, which Angelo was heading. So technically this will be a bit disappointing for the vision people amongst you. So I'm actually coming more. Nick invited me to see what we were doing more. And so it's more about I will give you a quick overview of what we did from a vision perspective. Certainly very, very simple. And then the last thing will be the last slide will be more or less what we would need from a human-robot interaction perspective from the computer vision world, so to speak. So first of all, I'm going to introduce iTalk quickly. Angelo, correct me if I do anything wrong. Then I'm going to pick two selected topics that we did in our lab, also in our part of iTalk at the University of Hertfordshire. And I said that the last point will be kind of a wish list for computer vision, which we would like to have in HRI, which from my perspective would be useful. So iTalk generally was a project which is very much at the core of this symposium or this meeting today, which is about integration of action and language. And so you have seen that guy already quite a few times today, so it seems that pretty much everybody's using it now. The iCAP was used as a platform, and so when you say integration of action and language, we've heard the talk before. So action in this robotic context mostly means grasping an object, pushing a ball. So it's a very tangible kind of action, so to speak. The actions are mostly visually guided, so computer vision is certainly a very important part of it, but nowadays there's also more and more work on proprioception, tactile sensing. So the actions are typically object-oriented, that's where the vision part comes in again. So in the system that I built, it was really, the robot's behavior was pretty much driven by the visual system. So the visual system was the core trigger. Whatever the visual system detected would determine how the robot would act. But then within iTalk, so within the social level, so to speak, also communicative actions are very important. And these are of a very different kind than these tangible kinds of actions. So the role from our lab was pretty much because of kind of the social robotics people or HRI people in the group. So the highest level of abstraction, if you will. So we use all the stuff that the Italians developed in terms of vision and control systems. And we had, I would say from my perspective, we had four big topics. The first one was proto-babbling, which I'm not going to speak about. So how can a robot acquire syllabic structures from exposure to language? The second one I'm going to talk about is the grounding of object labels. That was my other supervisor who did that kind of work. The third one is analysis of case behavior. I'm also going to not talk about that one today. And the fourth one was the stuff I did in my PhD, the grounding of negation, something that's utterly untangible. And this is based on, pretty much the experiments I ran are pretty much based on an object label learning, so a noun learning scenario. So it's which acts as a cover scenario because participants, I wouldn't know what people would do if I tell them to teach the robot the meaning of no. So I just decided we use this as a cover scenario, and we will see what we get. So to repeat quickly, simple grounding, I think the word was used already quite a few times today. I mean, what you usually mean with simple, people usually speak about linguistic units that are typically words. In literature, if you look at the simple grounding literature, what you mostly find are very, so especially in a robotic context, very concrete nouns describing objects, object classes that are visually discriminatable, as said. It's mostly driven by vision, these discrimination tasks. And or then we have also grounding of verbs, which are usually also very, very visual. I mean, but be aware there are a lot of verbs that have nothing to do with vision. You know, if I say I know, the verb know, there's no visual element to it. At least not as far as you have in any obvious way. So examples would be, so what would we actually use this kind of thing for? What you typically see in the literature are description of visual scenes. So you have a robot that just describes what is there and where it is. So you could think of an application of that, like if you have a household robot and he's ought to understand what you want from him, you could ask him to get something, and the robot then describes where something is located, like in this example. Or you have another obvious application would be you want to give the robot orders. So in that case, so what you see here in brackets are kind of two symbols, two words in English. So you have verb, get, but you already see get is a kind of abstract verb. It's not as concrete as you maybe should be. And then you have the glasses there. So you have to somehow establish a link between these two. So this is kind of picture of what the visual system somehow gives you some derivative thereof, and you link it to the linguistic unit. And you do the same for the glasses. Now what you can see here, so I said these two cases are pretty much, I think, summarize what you see in the literature. So there's not much more kind of things are done. It's really description of visual scenes or imperatives. Now the interesting thing about these two is these are two of quite a few types of speech acts. And one of my problems was in my PhD is what actually about the grounding of these guys? I mean, you know, we can ground words, nouns and verbs, it's all nice and good, but what about the pragmatic level? What about the speech acts? How does the robot know if it is asked, if it is being asked, or if it is being ordered? How do you go about that? It's typically hard-coded in those systems. Or you have a grammatical parser that detects the kind of if it is a question or not, and then the system will act accordingly. So in our group, the way we did simple grounding was we decided to do it in a linguistically unconstrained manner. The thing, most systems that you will see, it's usually what I would call designer-robot interaction, not human-robot interaction. That means you have somebody who knows exactly what the system can do and will act accordingly to make it work. and so the big challenge is to make the system work with somebody who doesn't know what is in there. And so that was kind of the challenge we had then. So I'm not going to show you this video because I was incapable to get it from my iPad. But the first picture you see, so the first scenario is pretty much the grounding of nouns, where you have a robot there, a person here, these objects, these cubes between them, and they would describe what these mean, the meaning of these symbols on these cubes. So then the kind of extension of this project was the acquisition of negation. In this case, so my idea was, well, somehow, if you read the psycholinguistic literature, you find always that the first meaning of no seems to be heavily affective. As you need some kind of affect. You know, if you're neutral about anything, there's no need to deny anything. So the idea was simply I extend the simple grounding system we already had, which took into account all the vision, all the modalities of the robot, and I put the motivational system in the robot, which would make it all want things or not want things, and feed this data in the very same manner into the system where all the other processes come up. And I'm going to show you, so I have two experimental setups I can't say too much about them. The first one is a so-called rejection experiment, that means the robot likes or dislikes stuff, and I wanted to see if people would linguistically interpret these behaviors, because that's what you see, what happens with caretakers and children.
Over here, this is the circles.
So you
That one. No, you don't like them.
So that's what you just heard. That's
You don't like the circles. What do you keep going on about? So, yeah, those are the circles. You see those there? No, you don't like the circles. No.
So this is a source of negation.
Yeah.
Here is
Okay.
and the second experiment, there's another hypothesis how no comes about, how children learn the meaning of no. I mean, you have to be aware, it's typically amongst the first 5 words. This is one of the first words that children say, so there must be something about why they pick it up. And so the second hypothesis is what I call the prohibition hypothesis, is that children learn no because they are prohibited by their parents, and that makes them grumpy, and they associate negative affect with this symbol. So the second experiment, there were forbidden objects that were marked. The robot did not know that they were forbidden. The participants knew they were forbidden. They had to do something about it. They had to prohibit the robot physically. And but these participants did not know that this was about negation.
How back to the circle?
No idea about it.
You really liked this one last time. You played with it a lot. It's like a ball. Yeah. Do you like playing with this block here? Circular block? No, you don't like that one. Okay. We'll go back to the square one. 4 sides, 4 corners. Yes, you like that one this time, don't you? You didn't like it last time. But you can't play with this one, unfortunately. I'm not allowed to give it to you. No, I'm sorry. No, you can't play. No, you're not allowed to.
So,
Squares, you quite like squares, don't you? But they don't do it for me, they're very boring. But everything here is on a square. No, you can't have it, no, you can't have it. You can look at it, but you can't have it. There's no good putting the face like that, you can't have it. You can look at it, but you can't have it, no. You can help.
So you can see, not surprisingly, no was indeed an extremely salient word. It popped up. An interesting thing is this experimentally, the task, participants had precisely the same task. As far as they knew, they did the same in both experiments, like the noun learning experiment and the negation learning experiment. As far as they knew, they were doing the same kind of thing. They had the same couple story. They did not know that they were supposed to teach negation here, but it just comes by virtue of the robot's behavior, and that they started using these words. And so, yeah. But I mean, what is more important for you, you see we use these objects here. This is, of course, from vision perspective, I guess, pretty bad. I mean, we use it because we don't have vision experts. I mean, now I know we're our vision experts, but back then not. I mean, I'm not sure if you know these things. These are so-called AR toolkit. They're easily detectable objects, and we just use them because we didn't have enough experience to use any more advanced vision system. So based, so as I said at the end, the wish list. So based on this, so what is very important with these kinds of experiments that your computer vision works in real time. There's actually no point having something that takes 2 seconds to pick up on something. And what you also have seen is that the robot moves. So he moves the head quite quickly. So your cameras move very quickly. So my first wish, so to speak, and maybe you can tell me that no problem. We have that all. It's all there. That would be great. Is that what would be nice if the robot would discriminate random objects, or maybe not totally random, but somewhat more natural than the boxes you have seen. And the cameras move. It should be possible to do that on an image that is based on a camera that moves. I mean, I'm saying angular speed, that's the wrong expression, that moves, can move the camera 45 degrees in, I would say, maybe a second. And maybe on at least 2 degrees of freedom, so that the robot has a tilt and pan unit, so that it, if you can do that, so if that's possible, that would be absolutely great. Another problem I faced a lot in face recognition, totally broke down under moving cameras. We used the commercial system from Australia that they use to detect. I think they use it mainly to detect when drivers of trucks fall asleep, so it's mounted in front of their face, pretty much fixed. We tried to use the OpenCV one, that didn't work out at all. This one was a bit better, but it also continuously lost track of the face. I mean, of course it loses track of the face was there, but so this was a massive problem for the face recognition, that these fast moving cameras. And So yes, and from human-robot interaction perspective, we totally find that these algorithms were specialized because you have information that you normally don't have with the camera. I mean, you have actuators, you get information from the actuator, so you know how the cameras move. You can distinguish something that moves from the outside from something that's caused through your own. You have this information, which you in general, I guess, don't have in these kind of algorithms. And that was basically it. So if you have any questions or suggestions, I would be very happy to.
We've got lots of questions. Walter, first.
I didn't understand which one, because you want to recognize objects when the object is moving or the camera is moving.
Actually, sometimes
because we have stabilized eyes precisely because that problem, because that velocity is extremely high.
Yes. Well,
reliably recognize.
it's kind of like if I do this, I'm moving.
But you want to stabilize the eye in that case, no? So you want
But the thing is, of course, nobody tells participants to stand still. You move, the camera moves, and
our eyes stabilize so that you can actually keep detail.
Well, actually,
45 degrees per second.
The controller I used, developed by one of the people at IIT, imitates the biological saccading movement. So what you do is you move the head a bit, and the eye saccades. So it's not.
Well, a saccade is different from move per second.
Yes. So maybe that caused problems, but.
Joanna?
I don't know if you know this, but I actually reviewed the ICOP project for 5 years when it was funded. So, and I have to say this is the most childlike behavior I've actually seen on ICOP ever. And I know it's partly because we always associate the negation with materials, but also a lot of the motions and things were really, really nice. So I don't know if I've been missing what you guys have been doing in Hertfordshire, but how much of your project was, I mean, how much of that is what's going on in Hertfordshire, and how much was the specific architectural controls in your project? What were the pieces?
Well, in the behavior you have seen, I developed specifically for the negation stuff. So, but I'm using as a controller basically the one that they wrote in IIT. We have the combined head and head-eye controller.
Yeah.
But of course, a lot of it was very, very fine-tuned to fit what I thought would be. How does it, for example, the head shaking behavior was just based on an avoidance vector. I calculate an avoidance. I say if the robot doesn't like something and it's outside of a certain center of the visual field, or then it calculates a vector in the opposite direction. It's a bit elongated on the horizontal plane because the robot cannot, it would be unnatural to break its neck and go back. So. But there was a lot of fine-tuning involved, but basically, and a lot of, actually, I have to say, what seems natural has a lot to do also with noise on the vision system. There's a lot of noise in the system, and that makes it, even for me as a designer, unpredictable to a certain degree.
Other questions?